She looked like any other 28-year-old woman, jeans, plain t-shirt, no military bearing visible. The courtroom assumed she was just another civilian with anger issues. Probably watched too many action movies, one juror whispered. But when the general burst through those doors and embraced her like a father embracing his daughter, everyone realized they had no idea who they were convicting. This wasn't just any young woman. This was a sniper who saved 47 lives in a single operation that officially never happened. The courthouse in Cedar Falls, Montana was nothing special. A modest two-story building squeezed between Miller's hardware store and a small cafe where locals gathered every morning to discuss weather and gossip. The parking lot was half full that Tuesday morning, mostly occupied by pickup trucks and sedans belonging to people who had come to witness what they expected to be a straightforward assault case. Inside, the courtroom buzzed with quiet conversation. Reporters from the local newspapers sat in the back rows, notebooks ready to document what appeared to be a routine trial. The case had generated some interest in town. A young woman accused of threatening a man at Thompson's gas station, claiming she could take him out from 800 yards without breaking a sweat. It sounded like the kind of story that would make good local news. Chen sat at the defendant's table, her hands folded calmly in her lap. She was 28 years old, with shoulder-length black hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She wore faded jeans, a plain white t-shirt, and worn sneakers that had seen better days. There was nothing remarkable about her appearance. She could have been a waitress, a store clerk, or a college student. Nothing about her suggested military training or combat experience. The public defender assigned her a case, Jennifer Walsh, shuffled through papers with the resigned expression of someone who had tried repeatedly to get her client to cooperate in her own defense. Maya had refused to provide character witnesses, declined to discuss her background, and showed no interest in plea bargaining. She simply sat in silence, seemingly content to let the legal process unfold around her. "Ms. Chen," Walsh had said during their last meeting, "you need to help me help you. The prosecution has witnesses. They have your alleged statements. And you won't even tell me where you were before moving to Cedar Falls. I can't defend you if you won't talk to me." Maya had looked at her with calm, steady eyes. "I appreciate your efforts, counselor, but some things are better left unsaid." Now, as the trial was about to begin, Maya maintained that same serene composure. She didn't look nervous or defiant, just quietly resigned, as if she had accepted whatever outcome awaited her. Judge Patricia Morrison called the court to order, and the room fell silent. Judge Morrison was a stern woman in her 50s who had presided over Cedar Falls County Court for 15 years. She was known for her no-nonsense approach and her intolerance for disruption in her courtroom. The prosecutor, District Attorney Robert Kane, was an ambitious man in his early 40s who saw this case as an opportunity to demonstrate his commitment to public safety. He had campaigned on a platform of being tough on crime, and a conviction in this case would reinforce his image as someone who didn't coddle criminals, regardless of their background. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," Kane began his opening statement. "The defendant, Maya Chen, may look harmless sitting there in her civilian clothes, but appearances can be deceiving. On the afternoon of March 15th, she engaged in a confrontation with Mr. David Patterson at Thompson's gas station. When Mr. Patterson asked her to move her car, she responded with threats that should chill every law-abiding citizen in this community." Kane walked closer to the jury box, his voice rising with practiced drama. She told Mr. Patterson, and I quote, "I could take you out from 800 yards without breaking a sweat." She claimed to have military training and suggested that he should be afraid of what she was capable of. This is not a dispute over a parking space. Ladies and gentlemen, this is terroristic threatening by someone who clearly has difficulty controlling her anger and adjusting to civilian life. In the gallery, a few spectators nodded in agreement. To them, the case seemed clear-cut. A young woman with apparent anger issues had threatened an innocent man. Maya's refusal to defend herself only seemed to confirm her guilt. Maya sat through the opening statement without reaction. She didn't flinch when Kane painted her as a dangerous individual. She didn't show anger when he suggested she was unstable. She simply listened with the same calm attention she might give to a weather report. The prosecution's case proceeded efficiently. David Patterson, a local insurance agent in his 40s, took the stand first. He wore a neck brace that his doctor had said was unnecessary, but that he claimed helped with residual trauma from the incident. She just exploded on me, Patterson testified, his voice trembling slightly for effect. I politely asked her to move her car because she was blocking the pump, and she turned around with this cold look in her eyes. That's when she made the threat about the 800 yards. The way she said it, it was like she meant it, like she had done it before. Did she specify what training she claimed to have? Kane asked. She said she was military trained and that I should be careful who I mess with. Then she did this thing with her fingers, like she was looking through a scope, and pointed it right at me. I genuinely feared for my life. The gas station clerk, Tommy Morrison, corroborated Patterson's story, though his version was less dramatic. There was definitely some kind of argument, he testified. I heard Ray's voices, but I was dealing with other customers. I saw the woman make some kind of gesture, but I couldn't say exactly what it was. A few other witnesses provided similar vague testimony about Ray's voices and aggressive body language. None of them had heard the exact words spoken, but they confirmed that there had been a confrontation, and that Patterson had appeared shaken afterward. Maya's defense attorney made minimal objections and called no witnesses. When Judge Morrison asked if the defense would be presenting a case, Walsh simply said, "Your Honor, we rest." The jury deliberation was expected to be brief. The evidence seemed straightforward, and the defendant had offered no alternative explanation for her behavior. Most observers expected a quick conviction, but Maya had secrets that no one in that courtroom could have imagined. 3 years earlier, she had been Staff Sergeant Maya Chen, serving with the 75th Ranger Regiment in a classified unit that officially didn't exist. Her specialty was long-range precision shooting in urban environments, the kind of surgical strikes that could end hostage situations, eliminate high-value targets, and save civilian lives without collateral damage. Operation Ghost Wind had been her final mission. A terrorist cell had taken control of a school in an unnamed country, holding 47 children and teachers hostage. Conventional assault would have resulted in massive casualties. Negotiation had failed. The situation was deteriorating rapidly. Maya had been positioned on a rooftop 1,200 yards away with a .50 caliber rifle and a mission that seemed impossible. She needed to eliminate 4 armed terrorists positioned throughout the school building without giving any of them time to harm the hostages. The shots had to be taken in rapid succession with perfect accuracy. Under extreme pressure, she had succeeded. 4 shots in 18 seconds. For confirmed kills, 47 lives saved. The operation had been so classified that it was never officially acknowledged. Maya's unit had been disbanded shortly afterward, its members reassigned to different postings or quietly transitioned out of active duty. She had been given an honorable discharge, a modest pension, and strict instructions never to discuss her service with anyone lacking appropriate security clearance. So, when David Patterson had aggressively confronted her at the gas station, demanding that she move her car and getting increasingly hostile when she tried to defuse the situation, she had responded the only way she knew how, with the calm precision of someone who had faced far more dangerous threats than an angry insurance agent. Her comment about 800 yards hadn't been a threat. It had been an observation, a way of telling Patterson that if she had wanted to hurt him, she wouldn't have needed to be standing 3 feet away from him. To Maya, it was like a professional boxer saying they could knock someone out with 1 punch, a statement of capability, not intent. But Patterson had interpreted it as a threat, and in the absence of any context about Maya's background, the legal system had reached the same conclusion. Maya had chosen not to defend herself because she couldn't explain her military service without violating security protocols that she had sworn to uphold. She would rather face conviction than break faith with her oath of secrecy. As the jury deliberated, Maya sat quietly in the holding area adjacent to courtroom. She had made peace with the likely outcome. She would probably face some jail time, community service, and a criminal record that would make it even harder to find steady employment. But she had kept her word, maintained her silence, and preserved the secrecy of operations that needed to stay buried. Outside the courthouse, however, events were unfolding that would change everything. General Thomas Harrison had been monitoring military justice cases as part of his duties overseeing veteran affairs. When a routine database search flagged the name Maya Chen in connection with civilian assault charge, he had initially assumed it was a coincidence. There were many people with that name, and most former military personnel managed to transition to civilian life without legal troubles. But when he cross-referenced the location and dates, his blood ran cold. The Maya Chun facing trial in Cedar Falls, Montana was the same Staff Sergeant Chun who had saved his life and the lives of countless others during Operation Ghost Wind. General Harrison had been the mission commander for Ghost Wind. He had been the one who had authorized the impossible shot. He had watched through surveillance feeds as Maya had performed what military historians would later call one of the most remarkable feats of marksmanship in modern warfare. If it had ever been officially recorded, he had also been the one who had ordered the mission's classification at the highest levels. Maya's heroism had been buried in black files because acknowledging it would have revealed intelligence capabilities that needed to remain secret. Now, 3 years later, that same secrecy was about to destroy the woman who had once been America's most valuable precision shooter. General Harrison had immediately canceled his afternoon meetings, commandeered a military aircraft, and flown to Montana. He arrived at the courthouse just as the jury was beginning their deliberations, wearing his dress uniform with 4 stars gleaming on his shoulders. The courthouse security had never dealt with a 4-star general before. They weren't sure whether to ask for identification, offer an escort, or simply get out of his way. Harrison solved their dilemma by walking directly to the information desk and asking, "Which courtroom is hearing the case of Maya Chun?" "Courtroom A, sir," the clerk stammered. "I believe they're in deliberation." "Not anymore," Harrison replied grimly. He walked through the courthouse hallways with the measured pace of someone accustomed to command. A few people recognized the significance of his rank and stepped aside respectfully. Others simply stared at the unexpected sight of a high-ranking military officer in their small-town courthouse. When General Harrison opened the doors to Courtroom A, every conversation stopped immediately. Judge Morrison looked up from her desk in surprise. The prosecutor turned around, confusion evident on his face. The defense attorney's mouth fell open, but Harrison's eyes were focused on only one person. Maya Chen sat at the defendant's table, and for the first time since the trial began, her composure cracked slightly. She recognized him immediately, and a flash of concern crossed her face, not for herself, but for him. "General," she said quietly, "you shouldn't be here." Harrison walked directly to the defense table, ignoring the whispered conversations erupting throughout the courtroom. When he reached Maya, he didn't salute or maintain military protocol. Instead, he opened his arms and embraced her like a father embracing his daughter. The gesture was so unexpected, so filled with obvious emotion and respect, that the entire courtroom fell into stunned silence. This wasn't the behavior of a superior officer toward a subordinate. This was the embrace of someone greeting a hero. Judge Morrison recovered first. "General, I'm not sure what brings you to my courtroom, but we're currently in the middle of deliberations for a criminal trial." Harrison released Maya and turned to address the court. "Your Honor, I'm here because this court is about to convict one of the finest soldiers I've ever had the honor to command. And I cannot let that happen based on a fundamental misunderstanding of who she is and what she's capable of." District Attorney Kane stood up, clearly flustered. "Your Honor, I object to this irregularity. We don't know who this person is or why he thinks he is standing to interrupt these proceedings." Harrison reached into his jacket and withdrew his military identification. "I am General Thomas Harrison, United States Army, former commander of Special Operations Command, and I'm here to provide character testimony for Staff Sergeant Maya Chun, testimony that should have been part of this trial from the beginning." Judge Morrison examined the credentials carefully. "General Harrison, while I appreciate your service and your desire to speak on Ms. Chen's behalf, the trial phase of these proceedings has concluded. The jury is currently deliberating. Then I request that you recall the jury your honor, because they're about to convict someone based on incomplete information. What they've heard described as threats were actually the words of a decorated combat veteran who saved 47 lives in a single operation." The courtroom erupted in whispers. Maya closed her eyes, knowing that her carefully maintained silence was about to be broken. But she also understood that General Harrison wouldn't be here unless he believed it was absolutely necessary. Judge Morrison called for order. "General Harrison, If you have information relevant to this case, I'll allow you present it. But understand that anything you say will become part of the public record. I understand, Your Honor, and I've been authorized by the Department of Defense to declassify certain information that is directly relevant to this case. Harrison turned to face the jury, who had been hastily recalled to the courtroom. His voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to briefing generals and senators. Ladies and gentlemen, 3 years ago, Staff Sergeant Maya Chen participated in an operation that officially never happened. A terrorist cell had taken control of a school building, holding 47 children and teachers hostage. Conventional assault would have resulted in massive civilian casualties. Negotiation had failed. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle over the room. Sergeant Chen was positioned 1,200 yards away, nearly 3/4 of a mile, with a mission that seemed impossible. She needed to eliminate 4 armed terrorists in different parts of the building without giving any of them time to harm the hostages. The margin for error was 0. Maya sat motionless, her eyes fixed on the table in front of her. She had never expected to hear this story told in a public courtroom. Sergeant Chen succeeded. Harrison continued. 4 shots in 18 seconds. For confirmed eliminations, 47 innocent lives saved. It was the most remarkable display of precision shooting I've witnessed in 30 years of military service. The courtroom was absolutely silent now. Even the court reporter had stopped typing, mesmerized by the testimony. When Mr. Patterson confronted Sergeant Chen at that gas station, her comment about 800 yards wasn't a threat. It was a statement of fact. She was telling him that if she had wanted to hurt him, she wouldn't have needed to be standing 3 feet away. For someone with her capabilities, 800 yards would be considered close range. Harrison walked closer to the jury box. But here's what you need to understand about Maya Chen. In all the time I've known her, through all the dangerous missions and high-pressure situations, I have never seen her show anger, lose control, or act with anything other than perfect discipline. The idea that she would threaten a civilian over a parking dispute is not just unlikely, it's impossible. David Patterson, still wearing his unnecessary neck brace, shifted uncomfortably in the gallery. His insurance agent's fantasy of being threatened by a dangerous criminal was colliding with the reality of having confronted a genuine American hero. The woman sitting at that table, Harrison continued, has a level of training and capability that most people can't imagine. She could have ended that confrontation in ways that Mr. Patterson never would have seen coming. But she didn't. She used words, poorly chosen words, perhaps, but just words. Because despite her extraordinary abilities, Maya Chen is fundamentally a protector, not a threat. Harrison turned back to Judge Morrison. Your Honor, this woman has given more in service to her country than most people give in a lifetime. She's maintained her silence during this trial not because she's guilty, but because she's honor-bound not to discuss classified operations. I couldn't let her face conviction for that silence. The general reached into his briefcase and withdrew a folder marked with various security classifications. These are Sergeant Chen's service records, declassified for the purpose of these proceedings. Purple Heart for wounds received in action. Bronze Star with V device for valor. Distinguished Service Cross for extraordinary heroism. And commendations from 3 different field commanders describing her as the finest precision shooter they've ever worked with. He placed a folder on the judge's bench. She doesn't brag about these things. She doesn't wear her medals or discuss her service. She just quietly transitioned to civilian life and tried to blend in, but she deserves to have her story told, especially when her silence is being mistaken for guilt. Maya finally looked up, and for the first time during the trial, tears were visible in her eyes. Not tears of sadness, but of gratitude for a commanding officer who had broken protocol to defend her honor. Judge Morrison reviewed the documents quickly. Mr. Kane, in light of this testimony, do you wish to proceed with the case as charged? District Attorney Kane looked around the courtroom, reading the faces of jurors who had clearly been profoundly affected by General Harrison's testimony. His political instincts told him that pursuing conviction of a decorated war hero would be career suicide. Your Honor, he said slowly, in light of the new information presented, the state is willing to reduce the charges to disturbing the peace with a recommendation for time served. No, Maya said quietly, speaking for the first time during the trial. I don't want to reduce charge. I want my name cleared completely. Judge Morrison looked at the prosecution, then at the defense, then at General Harrison. Mr. Kane, do you have any evidence that Sergeant Chen intended to carry out the alleged threat? No, Your Honor. Do you have any evidence that she has a history of violence against civilians? No, Your Honor. General Harrison, in your professional opinion, based on your knowledge of Sergeant Chen's character and training, do you believe she posed any actual threat to Mr. Patterson? None whatsoever, Your Honor. If anything, Mr. Patterson was safer in her presence than he would have been with most civilians. Sergeant Chen's training includes de-escalation techniques and an absolute commitment to protecting non-combatants. Judge Morrison set down her gavel gently. In light of the character testimony presented and the lack of evidence showing intent to carry out any alleged threat, I am dismissing all charges against Maya Chen. The defendant is free to go. The courtroom erupted in applause. Several jurors were crying. David Patterson had quietly slipped out during General Harrison's testimony, realizing that his insurance claims about trauma and ongoing fear were about to become very embarrassing. Maya stood slowly, still processing what had just happened. General Harrison approached her again, this time offering a formal salute before speaking. Sergeant Chen, I'm sorry it took so long for us to have your back the way you had ours. Maya returned the salute, her military bearing finally visible to everyone in the courtroom. Sir, you didn't have to do this. The operation was classified for good reasons. Some things are more important than classification levels, Harrison replied. Like making sure heroes don't get convicted for being heroes. As Maya walked out of the courthouse, a small crowd had gathered outside. Word spread quickly through Cedar Falls that their local troublemaker was actually a decorated war hero. Several veterans who lived in the area had come to offer their respect and support. But Maya didn't linger for accolades or interviews. She nodded politely to those who thanked her for her service, but she clearly preferred to avoid the spotlight. She had done her job, faced her trial, and been vindicated. Now she just wanted to return to the quiet civilian life she had been trying to build. General Harrison watched her go, knowing that Maya Chen would probably disappear back into anonymity within a few days. She would find another small town, another quiet job, another chance to blend in with the civilian population she had once risked everything to protect. But everyone in that courthouse would remember the day they learned that heroes don't always look like heroes. Sometimes they look like ordinary young women in jeans and t-shirts, sitting quietly at defendants' tables, carrying secrets too important to reveal even in their own defense. Sometimes the most dangerous person in a room is the one who chooses not to be dangerous. Sometimes the greatest strength is knowing when not to use it. And sometimes, just sometimes, someone with 4 stars on their shoulder will walk through those courtroom doors to remind everyone that silence isn't always consent, and that not all heroes wear uniforms anymore, but they're heroes just the same. Maya Chen never asked to be defended. She never expected General Harrison to risk his career by declassifying sensitive operations. But she learned something that day about the bonds forged in military service. They don't break when you take off a uniform. And the people of Cedar Falls learned something too. They learned to look twice at the quiet ones, to think carefully before judging those who choose silence over self-promotion, and to remember that the person pumping gas next to you might once have saved 47 lives with 4 perfect shots from 3/4 of a mile away. Not all heroes wear capes. Some wear jeans and sneakers and carry secrets too important to share, until someone with enough stars on their shoulder decides those secrets are less important than justice.